people have been left baffled by unexplained circular light seen hovering high over Moscow on Wednesday evening. Scientists have rejected claims of UFO activity, saying the white cloud was no more than an optical illusion. In the western part of Moscow, people described seeing a white circular formation in the sky. Footage capturing the spectacle will help weather specialists and scientists find an explanation for the event. They will examine weather conditions that could lead to such an effect, while chemical pollution has been ruled out as a potential cause.
A strange spiralling white light was spotted in the early morning sky over Sydney, with even sceptical witnesses wondering if it was a UFO. The unusual sight was recorded by hundreds of people from Victoria north to Queensland.
It appeared just before 6 o'clock this morning.
That's a UFO, I'm telling you.
A spiral in the sky around a bright light.
I mean, what in the hell was it?
Malcolm Richardson saw it move from west to east, disappearing into the sunrise.
It was actually rotating and throwing off a vapour, glowing vapour, in a spiral that was getting bigger.
He was not alone. Early morning surfers, farmers, truckies grabbed their phone cameras, still cameras, web cameras.
It's just the most astounding thing. I'm looking at the window now trying to see if it's come back or not.
From central Queensland to Melbourne, along the east coast, people shared a close encounter.
And this thing was moving at a rapid rate.
I thought, gee, that's so unusual.
I was just dumbfounded.
The Bureau of Meteorology confirmed it wasn't a weather phenomenon. Air traffic control say they didn't pick their radar, and that looks 14 kilometres into the sky. And the radio telescopes near Canberra confirmed that it wasn't in deep space, so that leaves Earth's orbit.
And the Sydney Observatory reckons this is the answer.
2, 1. Lift off.
An hour before the sightings, the Falcon 9 rocket took off from Cape Canaveral, Florida. As it reached low orbit, it started spinning, possibly venting fuel, passing over our east coast.
And that would account for the spiral structure that we saw this morning. It wasn't aliens arriving at Earth, unfortunately. Maybe one day, but not this time.
Paul Kadak, 7 News.
I want to get more from CBS News space analyst Bill Harwood. Bill, it is amazing the action on YouTube already just in the last 24 hours. People playing music behind these videos, anticipating the end of the world. This seems like a much more likely explanation, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does, Harry. And, you know, rockets can fail in spectacular ways, and when you look at vehicles up out of the atmosphere where there's no pressure constraining those contrails, it gets quite dramatic. We had a YouTube video, I think, of a Trident missile launch off Cape Canaveral back in 1989, that as soon as the missile came out of the water, the nozzle went hard over and the rocket just started spinning end over end, just like that. So this video looks very similar to that, and that would certainly be my assumption as to what went wrong.
And I've been in Norway in the winter and seen the Aurora Borealis, which is spectacular, but it bears no resemblance to that whatsoever.
No, it really doesn't. And, you know, I've seen in the past they've done experiments before where they've released materials into the upper atmosphere to study the ionosphere and things like that. And you get those same colors when those events happen. But in this case, this spinning plume motion clearly indicated the failure of some kind of solid rocket motor.
And can you imagine if you were standing there looking at the night sky and seeing that, how freaked out you would be? Bill Harwood, thank you very, very much for your help this morning. Do appreciate it. Scientists from all over the world are trying to figure out what caused a mysterious blue light to spiral in the sky over Norway on Wednesday. CBS News correspondent Sheila McVicker has the latest on the mystery. Sheila, good morning.
Good morning, Harry. Mysterious light indeed. A light appearing high in the Arctic sky, baffling those who saw it and exciting a lot of comment. Early yesterday morning, just before dawn, this appeared in the Norwegian sky. That's Norwegian for what the heck is that? A blue light, small at first, growing into a spiral and then disappearing into what appeared to be a black hole. In the northern community of Trøndelag and on a Norwegian military base, cell phones snapped, video cameras rolled, and bloggers got busy.
A spiral of light moving and then suddenly stopping. There's still a lot of speculation to what it could be.
The Arctic sky is no stranger to atmospheric phenomena. The northern lights and the seasonal flight of Santa, just two. But the explanation here apparently lies across the border with the Russian military and another failed missile launch. A respected Russian daily first reported this morning that the third stage of a sophisticated Bulava intercontinental missile failed. And space experts point to the spiraling of this missile as it failed to launch properly as an explanation for the shape seen over Norway, the halo, they say, produced by missile fuel. The Russian Defense Ministry has just reported that a test launch of a Bulava missile from a submarine in the White Sea failed. It's an embarrassing failure for Russia. Of 12 known tests, at least 7 have been unsuccessful. The Bulava is a high-tech, new-generation weapon capable of carrying multiple warheads up to 5,000 miles. And with those failures, it may now be on the verge of being scrapped. Harry?
Sheila McVicker live with us in London this morning. Thank you.
Left baffled by an unexplained circular light seen hovering high over Moscow on Wednesday evening, scientists have rejected claims of UFO activity, saying the white cloud was no more than an optical illusion. In the western part of Moscow, people described seeing a wide circular formation in the sky. Footage capturing the spectacle will help whether scientists and specialists find an explanation for the event. They will examine whether conditions that could lead to such an effect, while chemical pollution has been ruled out as a potential cause.
Mornings before that tonight, Norwegian authorities are investigating strange lights seen in the Arctic sky. The spiralling white light was seen for several minutes Wednesday morning. Locals say the light appeared to be bigger than the moon. Thousands of Norwegians bombarded the Meteorological Institute to ask what that light could have possibly been.
Citizens of America, citizens of the world. War in one form or another appeared with the first man. At the dawn of history, its morality was not questioned. It was simply a fact, like drought or disease. The manner in which tribes and then civilizations sought power and settled their differences. And over time, as codes of law sought to control violence within groups, so did philosophers, clerics, and statesmen seek to regulate the destructive power of war. The concept of a just war emerged. The capacity of human beings to think of new ways to kill one another proved inexhaustible, as did our capacity to exempt from mercy those who looked different. America led the world in constructing an architecture to keep the peace. A Marshall Plan and a United Nations. Mechanisms to govern the waging of war, treaties to protect human rights, prevent genocide, restrict the most dangerous weapons. And yet, a decade into a new century, this old architecture is buckling under the weight of new threats. But modern technology allows a few small men with outsized rage to murder innocents on a horrific scale. In today's wars, many more civilians are killed than soldiers. The seeds of future conflict are sown. Economies are wrecked, Civil society is torn asunder, refugees amassed, children scarred. But make no mistake, evil does exist in the world. We must direct our effort to the task that President Kennedy called for long ago. Let us focus, he said, on a more practical, more attainable peace, based not on a sudden revolution in human nature, but on a gradual evolution in human institutions. A gradual evolution of human institutions. To begin with, I believe that all nations, strong and weak alike, must adhere to standards that govern the use of force. That is a source of our strength. That is why I prohibited torture. That is why I ordered the prison at Guantanamo Bay closed. Intransigence must be met with increased pressure, and such pressure exists only when the world stands together as one. To the hundreds of thousands who have marched silently through the streets of Iran, it is telling that the leaders of these governments fear the aspirations of their own people more than the power of any other nation. And it is the responsibility of all free people and free nations to make clear that these movements of hope and history, they have us on their side. For true peace is not just freedom from fear, but freedom from want. It is undoubtedly true that development rarely takes root without security. It is also true that security does not exist where human beings do not have access to enough food or clean water or the medicine and shelter they need to survive. It does not exist where children can't aspire to a decent education or a job that supports a family. The absence of hope can rot a society from within. As the world grows smaller, you might think it would be easier for human beings to recognize how similar we are, to understand that we're all basically seeking the same things, that we all hope for the chance to live out our lives with some measure of happiness, fulfillment for ourselves and our families. And yet somehow, given the dizzying pace of globalization, the cultural leveling of modernity, perhaps comes as no surprise that people fear the loss of what they cherish in their particular identities, their race, their tribe, and perhaps most powerfully their religion. In some places, this fear has led to conflict. At times, it even feels like we're moving backwards. And most dangerously, we see it in the way that religion is used to justify the murder of innocents by those who have distorted and defiled the great religion of Islam. For if you truly believe that you are carrying out divine will, then there is no need for restraint. No need to spare the pregnant mother, or the medic, or the Red Cross worker, or even a person of one's faith. Such a warped view of religion is not just incompatible with the concept of peace, but I believe it's incompatible with the very purpose of faith. For the one rule that lies at the heart of every major religion is that we do unto others as we would have them do unto us. Adhering to this law of love has always been the core struggle of human nature. For we are fallible. We make mistakes and fall victim to the temptations of pride and power and sometimes evil. The nonviolence practiced by men like Gandhi and King may not have been practical or possible in every circumstance, but the love that they preached, their fundamental faith in human progress, that must always be the North Star that guides us on our journey. I refuse to accept despair as the final response to the ambiguities of history. I refuse to accept the idea that the isness of man's present condition makes him morally incapable of reaching up for the eternal oughtness that forever confronts him. Let us reach for the world that ought to be. That spark of the divine that still steers within each of ourselves. Somewhere today, in this world, a young protester awaits the brutality of her government, but has the courage to march on. Somewhere today, a mother facing punishing poverty still takes the time to teach her child, scrapes together what few coins she has to send that child to school, because she believes that a cruel world still has a place for that child's dreams. We can do that, for that is the story of human progress. That's the hope of all the world. And at this moment of challenge, that must be our work here on Earth. Thank you very much.
And now, some fresh pickings from the political grapevine. There is another group pushing for the release of more secret documents, and it too is threatening a pressure campaign against the administration if it does not get its way. The group? UFOologists. They want President Obama to come clean about alleged government contact with extraterrestrials. The Washington Times reports Apollo 14 astronaut Edgar Mitchell, who made the longest moonwalk in history, spoke to the group in Washington this week saying, quote, "It is now time to put away this embargo of truth about the alien presence. I call upon our government to open up and become a part of this planetary community that is now trying to take our proper role as a spacefaring civilization." Believers say with a new administration, the time is ripe for all classified files about any government interaction with extraterrestrial beings to be released.
A group gathering here in Washington to talk about their UFO sightings, but this apparently is no crackpot convention. Former high-level government and military officials are among those sharing what they've seen in the skies. Our national correspondent Gary Tuchman is here. He's watching all of this unfold. So what's this conference, Gary, all about?
Well, Wolf, it's most interesting. A panel discussion within the Beltway about what might be taking place in the Milky Way and beyond. Have extraterrestrials visited us here on Earth? Well, 14 men from 7 different countries participated in a panel discussion to describe why they believe UFOs have visited Earth. And these aren't guys they just picked up off the street. The panel includes former governor of Arizona, Fife Symington, who is one of many Arizonans who said they saw UFOs back in 1997 during an episode that is popularly referred to as the Phoenix Lights.
Major sighting here.
We want the United States government to stop perpetuating the myth that all UFOs can be explained away in down-to-earth and conventional terms. Instead, our country needs to reopen its official investigation that it shut down in 1969.
Also participating was a retired Air Force captain who says he and his passengers saw a huge flying disc. Also a retired Peruvian Air Force pilot who says he came within 300 feet of a circular UFO flying at 63,000 feet. And then there was a retired U.S. Air Force security officer who, while stationed in England, was summoned to a downed aircraft in a forest.
When we came up on the triangular-shaped craft, there were blue and yellow lights swirling around the exterior as though they were part of the surface. The air around us was electrically charged, and we could feel it on our clothes, our skin, and our hair.
Well, Penniston then says the craft took off. He never saw any beings inside or outside the UFO. He says he took pictures, but inferred they were purposely overexposed by the government. Now, we've talked to the FAA before about investigating these kinds of claims, but the agency says, quote, it does not have the power to investigate. We've covered a few of these kinds of stories before, Wolf, and one thing that we always mention to the enthusiasts is if one of these craft came down on Earth and did an interview with one of us, the debate would be over. But that hasn't happened yet.
Hasn't happened yet, but there's, who knows? Could happen. Gary, thanks very much for that report. By the way, there have even been some UFO sightings reported right here in the nation's capital. There was a flurry of them back in July of 1952 when the Air Force investigated but was never able to solve or prove anything. Take a look at these headlines. Aerial, what's its buzz? D.C. again. Air Force after D.C. saucers, jets ready to chase lights, jets ordered to hunt down flying saucers. There was a lot of hype, a lot of excitement back in 1952.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you very much, Steve and Cheryl, for that much too generous introduction. If my late mother were here, being my mother, she would believe every word of it. If my late father were here, being a realist, he would probably wonder who you were talking about. But introductions of that sort remind me of the small boy who fell headfirst into a barrel of molasses. And when they pulled him out, he licked some of the molasses from his face and said, "Lord, make my tongue adequate to this occasion." Well, actually, this is not my night for humor, and I'm not a match for either Stephen or George. So I'm not even going to try to be funny. Except my first line, and that's after this wonderful banquet, I think that I have exceeded the feed limit. Bad humor, you better believe it. I wish that I were in a mood for good humor, but I'm not. We are hell-bent in the direction of destroying our planet, and frankly, we appear to be doing very little about it. Decades ago, visitors from other planets warned us about where we were headed and offered to help. But instead, we, or at least some of us, interpreted their visits as a threat and decided to shoot first and ask questions after. The inevitable result was that some of our planes were lost, but how many were due to retaliation and how many were as a result of our own stupidity is a moot point. Wilbert Smith, one of the first Canadians to take an active interest in the subject of UFOs, asked the visitors about the accidental destruction of our aircraft by flying into the vicinity of a flying saucer. The response, and this is Wilbur's words, "We were informed that although a few of our aircraft had come to an unfortunate end by what they considered the colossal stupidity of our pilots, they were now taking corrective measures to avoid our aircraft. I asked them, and this is still Smith, I asked them what happened, and they said, well, the fields around the saucers in order to hold them up, in order to produce the gravity differential, the time field differentials which were necessary to operate the ship. These sometimes produced field combinations which reduced the strength of materials to the point where they were no longer strong enough to carry the loads that the materials were expected to carry. Now, as we know, aircraft, particularly the military type, are built with a rather small factor of safety. And in these regions of reduced binding, the materials are no longer strong enough to carry the load, and the craft simply comes apart. When I read that, I was reminded of the late, great soprano Lily Pons, who used to smash crystal goblets with her high C. She would direct the sound at them, and something in the sound waves would change the structure of the glass, and it would fly apart. Well, this didn't satisfy our military chiefs, who must have thought that it was more important to secure American nuclear superiority, even though using it would result in the annihilation of us all, than to take the hint and start moving the planet back from the brink of global disaster. They, the military, must have been and still are so paranoid that they feel it necessary to use the visitors' technology to fight them off, rather than welcome them as partners in development, though they may have seconded a few renegades to assist them in what can best be viewed as diabolical developments. Stephen has said that talking about UFOs is passé, and that we should be talking or limiting our talk to exopolitics. Well, Stephen, I agree with you in theory, but in reality we have a problem when official U.S. policy insists that UFOs don't exist. The veil of secrecy must be lifted, and it has to be lifted now, before it's too late. It is ironic that the U.S. would begin a devastating war, allegedly in search of weapons of mass destruction, when the most worrisome developments in this field are occurring in your own backyard. It is ironic that the U.S. should be fighting monstrously expensive wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, allegedly to bring democracy to those two countries, when it itself can no longer legitimately claim to be called a democracy, when trillions, and I mean thousands of billions of dollars, have been spent on projects about which both the Congress and the Commander-in-Chief have been kept deliberately in the dark. How much has been accomplished in 60 years of feverish activity by some of the most educated minds in the United States? Has America developed flying saucers that are visually indistinguishable from the visitors, as alleged? And if so, what do they propose to do with them? Even more critical, what progress has been made in the development of clean energy sources that could conceivably replace fossil fuels and save the planet from becoming a veritable wasteland? Well, who has the answers? Someone does, but apparently they aren't telling either secretaries of defense or presidents, because they don't have, quote, a need to know. In a story told by Dr. Stephen Greer, President Clinton was asked a question by White House reporter Sarah McClendon about why he didn't do something about disclosure. And Clinton replied, "Sarah, there's a government inside the government and I don't control it. Excuse me, doesn't the commander-in-chief and the person who allegedly has their finger on the nuclear trigger have a right to know what his subordinates are doing? The people of the United States who have paid the bills have the right to know. The people of the world demand to know because it is our descendants too whose lives are in mortal danger. It is time for the people of the United States to launch a new war against the evil of lies, deceit, and darkness, and go all out to win the victory of truth and transparency and light. Thank you.
Hello, I'm speaking with you from Fort Monroe, Virginia. We're also known as the Gateway to Freedom. We sit right next to a little town called Phoebus, Virginia. Interestingly, they call themselves the Gateway to the New World. Phoebus sits inside of Hampton, Virginia, whose motto is first from the sea, first to the stars. My name is Henry McElroy, Jr., a retiring former state representative from New Hampshire. Thank you for your attention to this brief message concerning the world's interaction with both Earth-based and off-world astronauts. The reason I am making this announcement is in the hopes of encouraging better perspective to all who explore the universe. Therefore, as a result, making a more valuable contribution to humanity for the benefit of all faiths, all races, and all nations. Another reason I am here today is because I believe in the foundational wisdom of our nation, which was laid down by our founding fathers, and because we know that highly advanced knowledge and information can assist human beings in solving various problems, both in current times and in our future. When I was in the New Hampshire State Legislature, I served on the State Federal Relations and Veterans Affairs Committee. It was apparently important that as a representative of the sovereign people who had elected me to this honorable office, that I be updated on a large number of topics related to the affairs of our people and our nation. As I understood it, some of those ongoing topics had been examined and categorized as federal, state, local development, and security matters. These documents related to various topics, some of which spanned decades of our nation's history. One of those recurring topics is the reason I am addressing you this evening. I would like to submit to our nation my personal testimony of one document related to one of these ongoing topics, which I saw while in office serving on the State Federal Relations and Veterans Affairs Committee. The document I saw was an official brief to President Eisenhower. To the best of my memory, this brief was pervaded with a sense of hope, and it informed President Eisenhower of the continued presence of extraterrestrial beings here in the United States of America. The brief seemed to indicate that a meeting between the President and some of these visitors could be arranged as appropriate if desired. The tone of the brief indicated to me that there was no need for concern, since these visitors were in no way causing any harm or had any intention whatsoever of causing any disruption then or in the future. While I can't verify the times or places or that any meeting or meetings occurred directly between Eisenhower and these visitors, because of his optimism in his farewell address in 1961, I personally believe that Eisenhower did indeed meet with these extraterrestrial off-world astronauts. I hope my personal testimony will aid the nation in its quest for continued enlightenment. I am honored to follow in the footsteps of those who have come forward with their personal testimonies, those who deserve the admiration of the American people for sharing their accounts publicly in an effort to elevate our knowledge to a higher understanding of our existence. People such as former astronaut John Glenn, Edgar Mitchell, Gordon Cooper, and Buzz Aldrin, just to name a few. Former presidents Ronald Reagan and Jimmy Carter, Captain Bill Newhouse of the United States Marine Corps, Lieutenant Colonel John Williams of the United States Air Force, Colonel Philip Corso, Sr. of the United States Army, Commander Graham Bethune of the United States Navy, along with David Hamilton of the Department of Energy, Donna Hare of NASA, and James Coop of the National Security Agency. I would also like to thank the countries of France, Brazil, Britain, Russia, Italy, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, New Zealand, and our neighbor to the north, Canada, Uruguay, and Australia, for also opening their files to the citizens of their countries and allowing them access to information that is so very important to the evolution of humanity. I thank you for allowing me this opportunity to have a small part in doing the same by sharing the information I have given you today. Thank you very much. And I'd like to thank our communications crew for helping us make this happen today. And I'd also like to authorize distribution of this video for anyone who wants to use it for educational purposes. And thank you.
UFO over China. According to reports, an airport in Inner Mongolia was forced to shut down to prevent passenger jets from crashing into the unidentified flying object. Witnesses reported a bright light shining in the sky before it suddenly vanished. On July 8th, Shaoshan International Airport was shut down because of a UFO. Officials later confirmed the object sighted was part of a military test. This latest show in the sky makes for the 8th reported UFO sighting in China since June.
A UFO in China's skies forced Shaoshan Airport to stop operations on July 7th. Outbound flights were grounded after the unidentified flying object was detected by a flight crew. The incident has captured the attention of Chinese media, and theories about the UFO's identity are burning up on the internet as well. They include everything from a hidden U.S. bomber to an elaborate man-made hoax. For now, the UFO continues to be a mystery. A spokesman from China's Civil Aviation Administration confirmed to ABC News that the matter is under investigation.
Are aliens from outer space visiting U.S. nuclear missile sites? It's no laughing matter to a group of former Air Force vets. They're revealing what they say has been a secret for years. Fox 5's Tom Fitzgerald tells us some may say their claims are a little out of this world, but these veterans say they have the evidence to back it up.
At first glance, they could be any group of retired military veterans.
I was a missile launch officer,
communication electronics officer,
the combat missile targeting team commander.
But besides their service in the Air Force, these men share something else.
A white pulsating light in the sky.
Dark, metallic in appearance with strange markings.
Stories that sound out of this world.
A fully illuminated round object was hovering silently over the missile silo and shining a light down onto it.
And then from this dead stop, it shoots off to the east, just like now you see it, now you don't.
Flying saucers, aliens, visitors, whatever they're called, these 7 Air Force nuclear missile veterans claim to have seen UFOs over 1960s nuclear missile sites that they say briefly shut the facilities down when the UFOs were there.
This planet is being visited by beings from another world.
Sound far-fetched? Well, the group produced old Air Force documents recounting reports of flying discs, flying saucers, and balls of fire. The same type Robert Salas says he saw while stationed at Montana's Malmstrom Air Force Base in 1967.
An object, a red glowing object hovering just above our front gate.
But while interest in aliens from other planets visiting Earth is nothing new, critics say government efforts to look into reported alien sightings are very old and have never found concrete proof.
At this point in time, I'm a debunker.
Roger Lanius, senior curator at the National Air and Space Museum, says he's questioned UFO conspiracy theorists for years and has come away a non-believer.
I always probe pretty hard. What kinds of evidence do you have to support this? I have yet to see any.
But these veterans insist they have actually seen the proof with their own eyes, even if they can't say for sure who or what may actually be out there.
Your guess is as good as mine, and I can't answer that question.
In Washington, Tom Fitzgerald, Fox 5 News.
It is news to many that the United Nations even has an Office for Outer Space Affairs, which is in fact responsible for promoting international cooperation in the peaceful uses of outer space. Joining me now is author and journalist Nick Pope, who used to run the British government's UFO project at the Ministry of Defence. Thanks so much for joining us. I presume you thought this story was ridiculous from the start.
Well, it's half true, you know. The Royal Society had a discussion meeting earlier this year called The Detection of Extraterrestrial Life and the Consequences for Science and Society. And one of the questions asked was, who speaks for planet Earth? And Dr. Othman simply said, well, look, maybe the UN Office for Outer Space Affairs should have a role in that.
Which would mean her.
It would mean her. So I think what was an intriguing possibility in the mind's eye of the media became a certainty. But scientists are thinking about these sorts of issues. If we pick up a signal, do we reply? If we reply, what should we say?
Who replies?
Well, people are looking for signals using radio telescopes. Yes. If we find one of the big issues, and Stephen Hawking has talked about this recently.
The Cambridge professor.
Absolutely, has said, well, maybe we shouldn't reply at all, because look what happened when the European explorers encountered the Native Americans. Didn't come off too well for the Native Americans. But all these issues now, the scientific community are beginning to think about this, and I think that's interesting.
And is the information and the research coordinated in a way that if a signal did come through, you'd all be discussing it, and you would perhaps put together some sort of response and decide who it would be? Is there any sort of setup or any committee of any kind?
Well, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence have something called the Declaration Protocols, which is really more about verification than anything else. But these issues, these next step issues, should we reply, what should we say? The Royal Society are going to be discussing that at their meeting next week, which I'm going to be attending.
Okay, and just to give us a bit more background about your experience in this, you were in charge of all of this, effectively, for the British government. You came to the conclusion, eventually, from an impartial point of view, that there are UFOs likely to come or have come?
Well, I'm not sure about that. I'm convinced...
You couldn't write off some of the examples.
I couldn't write... Exactly. The politician's answer. I'm convinced there's life out there. Not sure if we're being visited, but some of the UFO sightings that we investigated, we couldn't explain in conventional terms.
Okay, and so... if you had enough resources at the time, how much more would you have researched that, and what do you think your conclusion might have been?
Well, I don't think there's a manager anywhere in the civil service who wouldn't say, please, can I have more resources if available. I would have liked to have obviously hooked up much more with the astronomical community. And it's interesting, the Royal Society, when it's discussing this, brings together a multidisciplinary group of physicists, cosmologists, but even theologians, social scientists. People are talking about the religious implications of this even.
Okay, so when the Royal Society does meet and discuss it a bit further, do you think there is a will within the scientific, theological communities, as it were, to have some sort of representative? It would be the UN, wouldn't it?
It probably would have to be the UN. I don't think it could be a political leader. It couldn't be a religious figure. It would have to be someone who could genuinely say, I speak for the people of this planet. And the UN is probably it, which is where we come back to Dr. Othman, and maybe she is the right choice after all.
Who's fighting it? There must be someone fighting it. This is politics after all.
Well, I don't know. Maybe one of her colleagues was a little bit over-enthusiastic about translating this speculation that the UN Office of Outer Space Affairs might have a role into a certainty. I don't know.
Promoting the department. Thank you very much. Thanks very much.
Well, a lot of people are looking up. It's because of a mystery in the sky. Is it a balloon, a UFO? Whatever it is, it sure has a lot of people talking. Eyewitness News reporter Jeff Begay is live in Chelsea where crowds have gathered. Jeff, what's this all about?
Well, Sade, we don't know, quite honestly. And when I got this assignment, I thought for sure somebody in the newsroom was joking. And it wasn't until we pulled up to this corner and saw the passersby looking up that we realized that, okay, maybe there is something in the sky today.
Oh, snap. Yeah.
You got it? It's a bird, it's a plane, it's,
Maybe Superman, maybe Wonder Woman.
You'd rather it be Wonder Woman?
Yeah.
There is something up there, and there's been a crowd of people at the corner of 8th and 23rd Street trying to figure out exactly what it is. I think I see it now. Right over there.
Right there.
Wait, there's another one over here?
I just see.
I see those two over there.
Earlier today, it was over here.
I think it's a balloon. I don't know.
You think it's a balloon?
Yeah. All right. But then again, balloons don't stand still.
Maybe we're not all just seeing things. The city is reporting that they've been getting calls about this mystery in the sky to their 311 line. So far, they don't have an answer.
What is that?
To that question either. But what do you think it is?
I don't know.
You don't want to say it.
I'm looking for the mothership.
Did she find it? Well, still a mystery. We don't know. We did make some calls, and we found out from the FAA that their planes aren't being affected by these white lights. Not that that answers the question. So it remains a mystery. Everybody out here seems to have an opinion on it. I was told that there have been some people out here just standing around looking up for about 45 minutes trying to figure it out. We're live in Chelsea. Jeff Begay, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
Crowds in New York have had their eyes to the skies in an alleged UFO sighting. Dozens of videos posted online show passersby seemingly staring at a group of unidentified flying objects in the sky over Manhattan. Adding mystery to the event is a prediction by a retired air defense officer. In a recent book, he claimed that on October 13th, the day of the sighting, of course, a fleet of UFOs would hover over the world's principal cities. But many witnesses insist that's indeed what they were seeing. Alien spaceships, while others say it looked more like a group of hot air balloons.
So what is it? What we're looking at? Balloons? Who has binoculars? Can I see them? I can't see. Did you get a close-up? I'm looking for aliens. It's a spaceship. A group of them. I saw them when they disappeared. Hey, I don't have binoculars. Are they strobing or anything? They were together and now like they separated. They're flying away from each other. Did you film it this morning? It was crazy. Yeah. It's 5 or 5, 6, 7. 5, 6. Look, they're together. It's 5 right there, and there's one more down there. I have no idea. I see one all the way up here. See it? I don't know. That's what we're here tonight. It's a weather balloon. That's what it is. Yeah. Who has a Zoom? We're trying to find out if these are spaceships.
There was some lady crossing on 21st Street. She said a circle, a square, and a triangle. And she said also like a chain link. I wish, I have to be somewhere by 3:30. I wish I had time. So I'll see her again. I will look at her. Me too. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Many of you have been waiting for. Strange and mysterious lights hovering above East El Paso tonight. What's even more strange, very similar lights were spotted in Manhattan just 2 days ago. Above the skies of Northeast and East El Paso tonight, a sight that was a little more than stunning. This is what one of our photographers, Ram Moreno, caught on video. One solitary light that appears to be falling in the sky. But that light suddenly breaks apart into 2, then 3 separate lights. Those lights then just freeze in the air and begin to hover. Eventually, a 4th light can be seen. Then the lights appear to be hovering and then moving in a strange pattern. Then they all disappear. We received a lot of phone calls into our newsroom tonight from people in the northeast part of town and on the east side, all of them wanting to know what was going on. And the descriptions from everyone calling basically the same. One caller thought a plane was falling. Another thought it was a meteorite. Others, though, said it looked like a UFO. Now, you want to get really creepy? Check this video out. Just 2 days ago, in the sky above Manhattan, people froze on the street there as they saw these 3 lights hovering in the middle of the day. And check this out. The 3 lights are close to each other, then spread out into this triangle pattern. Now, look at the patterns side by side. This from Manhattan and the other tonight in El Paso. I gotta tell you, they do look eerily similar.
Well, tonight we did talk with the El Paso Airport spokeswoman. She says there were air show planes in the air tonight running through maneuvers, though she couldn't tell us exactly which crews were doing that. More exercises are going to happen tomorrow night as well. And Aurelia, I know you are a believer that little green men were floating around above us.
Actually, we were more like joking about how they probably were in Manhattan and they were like, oh, these New Yorkers are too rude. Let's go somewhere nicer. Like,
They headed south.
They headed south. Maybe they were trying to go to Roswell. They got lost.
All I know is that
¿Qué son esos?
Son como unos cohetes, si son flares, si acaso son flares. ¿Quién sabe? Dicen que son flares, pero quién sabe. Son como cohetes que tira la gente cuando necesita ayuda, las avienta cuando tienen un gun. Les pasa y se va a pelear como si fuera como un cohete. Ay, se salió otra vez. Ay, güey.
I think it's time to open the books on questions that have remained in the dark, on the question of government investigations of UFOs. It's time to find out what the truth really is that's out there. We ought to do it really because it's right. We ought to do it because the American people, quite frankly, can handle the truth. And we ought to do it because it's the law.
Who knows, maybe we will soon get the full story. Among the people fascinated by the notion of aliens and UFOs, the man in charge of Obama's transition team, John Podesta. Now, in a speech at the National Press Club just a few years ago, he said this: "It is time to open the books on questions that have remained in the dark on the question of government investigations of UFOs. It is time to find out what the truth is that's really out there." Can we bring the music back in now? He said it's not just the right thing to do, it's the law. No, he's a big X-Files guy. He's a believer. And so who knows?
Ramon, I'm hoping you have some answers for us. What are you hearing on your end?
Well, Dina, as you can see here, the sun is starting to set here in Los Angeles. And it was about this time yesterday that a lot of people saw what they think looked like a missile being launched just off the coast of Los Angeles here. The problem is that the United States government, the military, says they don't know what it is. A lot of people are not buying that information. Now, most of us have seen the video by now of this huge condensation trail going after what looks like a missile or some sort of rocket. Now, we've talked to a lot of military experts who have weighed in on this. Some of them say that it could have been a missile that was fired off accidentally by the U.S. military. Some say that it was just some sort of fighter jet, and the trail that it left behind made it look like a missile. However, the fact that the U.S. government has been hush on this, saying they don't know what it is, has raised a lot of suspicions about what this truly is. Now, we've talked to military experts from around the world, including in Russia, who have weighed in on what they think might have happened.
All experts, I think, agree that it's a launch of some kind of ballistic missile and probably underwater. And I think that it's a great embarrassment for the American military. It shows that with all the billions spent on the national defense, the United States basically is vulnerable to this kind of unwarranted attacks.
And there's been a lot of speculation that this is some sort of intercontinental ballistic missile, even by experts here in America, which is very concerning because these are the sort of missiles that are capable of carrying very deadly warheads to other countries. So, I mean, there's a lot of concern, especially for the fact that it went off so close to Los Angeles, where millions of people live. So the fact that the government isn't coming out and saying what this was, even though this is the same military that's able to say what happens as far as military strikes in other nations, it's very suspicious. A lot of people think that this may have been a mistake and that the U.S. government is just really right now trying to buy its time in order to explain what really happened. Now, there have been several military mistakes that involved high-grade weapons in the past in which top military officers have been disciplined, but until either NORAD or the Pentagon tells us exactly where this missile, this mystery missile came from, we won't know who will be held accountable.
Well, now back to that mysterious missile launch. The bright light could easily be seen up in L.A., but tonight we're still trying to figure out what it was.
News 8's Marcella Lee did some digging and joins us with how tough it was to find an answer. Marcella?
Barbara Lee and Carlo, we put in a lot of calls to the Navy and Air Force tonight about this, an incredible missile launch off the coast of L.A. around 5 p.m. But so far, no one seems to know anything about this launch. So we showed the video to Ambassador Robert Ellsworth, a former Deputy Secretary of Defense, to get his thoughts.
And it's spectacular. It takes people's breath away.
Who launched this missile and why remain a mystery for now.
It is a big missile.
These magnificent images were captured from the KCBS News helicopter in Los Angeles around sunset. The location of the missile, west of L.A., north of Catalina Island, and approximately 35 miles out to sea.
You're looking at the L.A. harbor.
A Navy spokesperson tells News 8 this wasn't their missile. He says there was no Navy activity reported in that part of the region.
And we have liftoff.
On Friday night, Vandenberg Air Force Base launched this Delta II rocket, carrying the Thales Alenia Space Italia Cosmos SkyMed satellite. But a sergeant at the base tells News 8 there have been no launches since then.
That's a pretty big contrail.
We showed the video to Robert Ellsworth, former U.S. ambassador to NATO and a former Deputy Secretary of Defense.
It's not a Tomahawk.
He said we should wait for definitive answers to come from the military. But when we asked him what he thought it could be,
I'm just speculating.
Ellsworth said maybe, just maybe, with President Obama in Asia, this could have been a show of our military muscle.
It could be a test firing of an intercontinental ballistic missile from a submarine, underwater submarine, to demonstrate, mainly to Asia, that we can do that.
Ambassador Ellsworth says that was done in the Atlantic to demonstrate America's power to the Soviets when there was a Soviet Union, but he doesn't believe it's ever been done over the Pacific. But again, he emphasizes that is just speculation, and as of tonight, it remains a mystery missile. Barbara Lee?
Marcella, thanks. The next missile launch from Vandenberg Air Force Base is scheduled for sometime in December.
It sure did. A bizarre glowing red-hot streak in the sky right at sunset, moving briskly behind the Manhattan skyline. CBS 2 reached out to a top astronomer who looked at the video. He says it looks beautiful, but it's likely nothing more than what's known as contrail, condensation from a commercial or military jet. Aliens apparently are not coming.
It's like a comet racing across the sky.
Which is, this is also the same thing that they're saying is the explanation for what they caught out in Los Angeles yesterday, which looked like a missile, and they say it's this contrail.
We told you about a possible missile, rocket, or maybe airplane that was seen off the coast of California on Monday. Today, there still aren't many answers as to what it actually was, but one woman says she has some answers. You'd be surprised to find out where she's getting her information from. Colleen Thomas is a home health administrator turned physicist who specializes in the science of creation. And she's the mother of a race of good aliens here on Earth called Pleiadians. She says she knows exactly what happened with that missile, and she joins me now from Roseville, California. Colleen, thanks so much for joining me. First of all, tell me what you know about what happened with that supposed missile.
It was I got in my ear, as it were, as I was sleeping, that it was a missile fired, President Obama trying to start a war with Iran. The Pleiadians downed the missile harmlessly at sea, and then last night from San Diego, our government fired another ICBM at the Pleiadians this time. But the Pleiadians ships are able to change density and do all kinds of things that these guys on this planet have never imagined. And a rocket could pass right through them and not harm them. And plus, they can outrun it too if they wanted to just get out of the way. But it's really kind of silly to think that we can take on a race that's been around for many, many, many millions of eons longer than the reptilians.
And really briefly, Colleen, some people might not know exactly who the Pleiadians were, so why would President Obama want to fire an ICBM at the Pleiadians?
Because they're here to rescue the human beings who are being enslaved on this planet and forced into a paradigm of a super oligarchy that favors the Bilderberg Group and the Illuminati and is completely and utterly without any conscience towards the human beings whatsoever. They poison us deliberately in order for us to have to buy pharmaceuticals so that they can string our miserable little lives along on pharmaceuticals for the rest of our aging days. there's no need for us to be in the kind of physical condition that we are in. But they put chemtrails in collusion with BP, British Petroleum. They put chemicals in jet fuel, and those chemicals end up getting sprayed in these minute particulates that rain down on our food, on our crops, and in our water. There's lithium in those chemtrails. There's also fluoride and a lot of other heavy metals that are dispersed in the air as chaff, so that the American government can talk to one another militarily without being listened in upon by other foreign countries. They know this stuff is toxic for us, but there's money in toxifying us. And so they work in collusion with the pharmaceutical companies with these backdoor deals, changing the laws and making everything favorable for these guys, but not favorable for the humans whatsoever. Humans are just commerce to these people, and they're also meat to these people. They not only kill and eat us, they sell our dead bodies on a meat market of their own kind that goes passing by here every 50 years. And I got that straight from a CIA agent.
And, you know, I know that you say that you have contact with the Pleiadians. How often do they talk to you, and what else do they say about the current situation in the United States right now? We're in a recession. There's talk about China surpassing us in the economy. I'm curious what the Pleiadians have to say about all of those issues, too.
They are working towards the peace of this planet and towards towards eradicating us of our draconian reptilian infestation. China actually fired an EMP weapon in the Pacific Ocean last night. Its target was an American warship full of fighter planes, and it was on its way towards China and up to absolutely no good whatsoever. So China disabled the ship with an EMP weapon. We spent most of the night last night evacuating everybody that was on that ship off because it was completely dead. No electronics whatsoever survived the EMP pulse.
Wow, well, it sounds like you've had your hands full these days. You've been very busy, and the Pleiadians definitely sound like they have an interesting analysis on what's going on here in the United States and across the world. Colleen Thomas, a home health administrator, I really appreciate your time with us. Thank you so much.
Josh, really, this is pretty bizarre because at the highest level, I mean, even from NORAD and NORTHCOM, we're hearing not quite sure.
And not only that, Kira, but I'm about to bring you two experts. One of them who says this is absolutely obviously an airplane. The other one who says it's absolutely obviously not. The first thing I want to do, though, let's get back to that video we were just showing, because I want all of you to understand how it's even possible that the words optical illusion could be involved here. It's a little bit of a Rorschach test to understand what people are talking about when they say contrail. Contrail is a condensation trail. If this is an airplane that's traveling through the sky, then instead of it being something that took off at the ground and is shooting directly upward, what's actually been happening is that airplane has sort of been coming toward you. And over time, the smoke, the vapor that it leaves behind widens out a little bit, broadens out. Our eye thinks broader means lower to the ground. And if you think about how the horizon looks, when you look off to the horizon, it kind of feels like the Earth is flat and things are going down, right? So the idea is, if that other vapor that's wider there is really just farther away, then the plane is just kind of coming toward you, and it's not this thing that's just taken off from the ground. That is what a lot of experts say, that this is an airplane contrail. One of those experts, his name is John Pike. Here he is.
The vehicle at the tip of the contrail is moving far too slowly to be a rocket. Since the contrail is eliminated by the sunset, you're able to see hundreds of miles of it all the way to the horizon. This creates an optical illusion that it was fired out of the ocean a few dozen miles away.
All right, but some other experts are saying absolutely no way. I just now spoke with an MIT professor who studies and teaches these technologies in international security. His name is Ted Postel. Here's what he says.
It certainly appears to be a missile that was shot into the air. The video appears to be tracking the object after what looks like...
Hello, Brenda. How are you?
Hi, Edward. I am doing good. I can't wait to vote on November the 2nd. In 2008, I voted for Obama because I did not like the direction of where our country was going. I thought if I voted for him, things would change, but I guess I was wrong because the United States continues to decline. So I am going to vote for some Republican candidates so they can help stop the Obama agenda.
Brenda, I do agree that the United States is headed in the wrong direction and that the Obama agenda is not good either, but you need to understand that the two major parties are both working in concert to bring America into total bondage. It is the two-party, one-party system, the left-right paradigm.
What? What are you talking about? The mainstream media tells me that there is a huge difference between Republicans and Democrats.
Yes, Brenda. I realize that the powers that be try to give the average voter an illusion of choice by allowing them to vote for one of two candidates that speak slightly different rhetoric and say the cliché propaganda of their party, but the fact of the matter is ultimately the agenda of the global elite continues, unhindered.
Global elite? What are you? Some sort of conspiracy theorist?
I understand that people are conditioned by the social engineers to call anyone who even slightly implies that there are groups of people within high levels of government, media, finance, and business working towards nefarious ends as a conspiracy theorist. But you cannot deny the fact that no matter which party is in power, little seems to really change. Carroll Quigley said it best. He said, the idea that the two parties should represent opposed ideals and policies, one, perhaps, of the right and the other of the left, is a foolish idea acceptable only to doctrinaire and academic thinkers. Instead, the two parties should be almost identical, so that the American people can throw the rascals out at any election without leading to any profound or extensive shifts in policy.
But that would mean that the television was lying to me.
Yes, Brenda, that is an understatement to say the least. See, I remember when Bush was in power, a lot of people on the left loved to try to insult him as a right-wing fascist, and now that Obama is in power, people on the right call him a radical left-wing socialist, but in reality a more accurate term for both Bush and Obama would be to refer them as corporatists. The left-wingers love to blame big business for all of our problems, while the right-wingers love to blame big government for all our problems, when really it is the merger of both big government and big business, corporatism, that is plaguing our nation and the world. Benito Mussolini once said this: fascism should more appropriately be called corporatism, because it is a merger of state and corporate power.
Okay, you are making some good points, but can we start talking about sports, TV, celebrity gossip, or reality shows now? My head is starting to hurt.
Sure, I tried to keep this short as it seems everyone's attention span is extremely short these days, but let me just recommend a few things for you. Make sure to check out some books and documentaries on the Federal Reserve, the military-industrial complex, globalism, Edward Bernays and Public Relations propaganda, geopolitics, and the New World Order, but most importantly, try to turn off the TV, and make sure to question everything.
Okay, let's talk about Clayton's favorite story.
Yes. Lay it on us, man. All right, listen to this. So, this isn't one of my favorite stories. What we have coming up at the end of the hour is, but I think this is funky. It relates to it, though. It does, and it's a little offbeat and weird. The United Nations, right? A place where nations come together and have discussions and unite, and they unite under the United Nations. They have now appointed an Earth contact for aliens.
Just in case, right? Just in case we are visited by somebody from another planet or galaxy.
Right.
I love it. Finally, the United Nations is being proactive.
Right,
okay, they're doing something to prepare, because they say they need a plan in place in the event that someone tries to make contact from another world.
But hold on. When you put it that way, let's say we are visited.
Yes.
First thing people are going to say, well, why weren't we prepared? Why did we have somebody waiting at the door?
Why didn't we have someone that that had an office we could go to?
Well, that's absolutely right. And so she is an outer space liaison, basically. Her name is Maslin Othman. She's an astrophysicist, and she is the person, when they say, take me to your leader,
she's the leader.
She is the leader that will communicate with them. Now, here's the only curious part about this whole story to me. Do they know that? How are we telling the outer space creatures that get in touch with Maslin Othman?
I don't. I would imagine once they land, somebody calls her.
Yes.
Maslin, you're not going to believe this. They're here. We need to fly you where that is.
Yeah, you thought you were going to have a 3 weeks in Bermuda?
Right.
No, they're here. We need you.
But what does she have in her bag? You know, by the door when she gets the call? What's in that bag?
Reese's Pieces.
Reese's Pieces. Take me to your leader.
That's your bag.
That's my
that
bag.
You keep packed at all times.
Look, you know, this isn't. I hate when it really drives me nuts when you have like a lot of media outlets will do these UFO stories and they'll put like X-Files music underneath it because there's so many.
Like we're doing now?
No, we're not.
Oh, we're not. Okay.
No, you have like government officials who've gone on the record. In fact, Ronald Reagan himself went to the United Nations and spoke and talked about being visited by aliens in front of the United Nations.
Wanting a plan.
Wanting a plan.
Right, and they say that they have actually now come up with this coordinated response. I mean, it does stand to reason. Here's her rationale. She says that hundreds of new planets have been discovered. So there's just increasing the likelihood that life will be on one of those planets.
And the Vatican also says the same thing. So at the end of this hour, 8:50, set your clocks. We're going to be talking about it more coming up.
Take a look at these pictures. This UFO that you see right there was witnessed by hundreds of people back in 2006. This was over Chicago's O'Hare Airport. Pilots witnessed it, military officials witnessed it, and the FAA admits it was on their radar. The author, who has spent 10 years interviewing government officials who saw this strange sighting, is here to tell us about it next.
All right, here it is, my favorite segment of the morning. Real or just a hoax? The question comes up whenever UFOs are mentioned, but now some new support that may surprise you. Tomorrow, former military personnel are speaking out for the first time on camera about their personal experiences with UFOs in Washington, D.C. Investigative journalist Leslie Kean has been studying this for years. She's the author of the new book, UFOs, Generals, Pilots, and Government Officials Go on the Record. She's here to talk about it. Leslie, great to see you this morning.
Great to see you, Clayton.
So you spent 10 years working on this book. You have 5 different military generals that you've interviewed in this book. How did you manage to pull all this together?
Well, I mean, as you said, I've spent a long time working on it. I've published lots of stories on it in mainstream media, and over the years I started to reach out to some of these very high-level contacts, which you said are generals and military people from around the world, government officials who have investigated this, and just made it a point to get the most official and the highest level data that I could about the subject.
What I love about your book is you don't put any stories in the book that could be argued with. You call yourself a UFO skeptic. So none of the stories in the book, you say, could be argued with.
I agree with you. I mean, the evidence is irrefutable for some kind of physical phenomenon, and it's well documented in the book through multiple witnesses, radar, ground traces that are left by things that land.
And airline pilots,
Right.
officials, and so forth. Let's start with one, actually. This was at Chicago O'Hare Airport in 2006. This was witnessed by dozens of people there at O'Hare, and pilots as well. Tell us what happened in this one that ended up shocking a lot of people.
Absolutely. There was a disc that was hovering right over the United Airlines terminal. A round, metallic-looking disc that lots of people saw, as you said. It hovered there for maybe 5 minutes minimum and suddenly shot straight up through the clouds above it. There was a cloud bank above it and left this absolutely crisp hole in the clouds. People underneath could look up and see the blue through the cloud. So that's basically what happened. A lot of people saw it. None of the witnesses would go on the record because they're worried about ridicule, unfortunately.
Yeah, the pilots and people were worried about losing their job as well. Some other people in Phoenix were worried about losing their jobs for going on the record about the Phoenix Lights. This is one of the most famous UFO encounters ever. And take a look at this video. Thousands of people witnessed this over Phoenix. In fact, you in the book interviewed the governor of Arizona at the time, Fife Symington, about this, right?
Absolutely. Not at the time, but years later, and he is, in fact, probably one of the most famous witnesses because, as you said, he, too, was afraid of ridicule. While he was governor, he saw this object that lots of other people saw, but didn't say anything about it for 10 years. 10 years later, he decided that it was time to make amends to the people that he had withheld this information. It was very important to the people of Arizona that they know that he was one of the people that saw it as well.
And he's featured in the book. Also in the book is McMinnville, Oregon. This one goes back to 1950, and I think this is fascinating. Way before Photoshop. Take a look at this photo. What are we seeing here?
Yeah, this was taken like with a Brownie camera. A farmer and his wife were just out on the farm in the middle of nowhere. They saw this disc hovering overhead, ran in and got their camera, took 2 very, very incredible photographs that have been well documented and studied by laboratories for decades.
Well, I would encourage everyone to pick up this book. If you're sitting there as a skeptic, read it from beginning to end and then make your decisions about it. Leslie Kean, the book is great. It's called UFOs. It is out now. Clueless voters who don't know.
In the 1940s, an Austrian immigrant to America and refugee from Nazi Germany, Dr. Wilhelm Reich, made the scientific discovery of a previously unknown energy existing in the atmosphere, in space, and within living organisms. Discovered accidentally, Dr. Reich eventually demonstrated this blue glowing energy to charge up and radiate from microorganisms, plants, animals, and humans. This energy also existed in a free form within the open atmosphere and in high vacuum. He called this energy the orgone. Orgone energy, as Dr. Reich discovered, was synonymous with life energy, long postulated by scientists and accepted as fact by ordinary people from around the world. Orgone energy could be gathered in its free form directly from the atmosphere using a device he later called the orgone energy accumulator. A simple enclosure resembling a large hollow capacitor composed of alternating layers of special insulators and conductors. The orgone accumulator allowed a high charge of the orgone to collect inside itself, facilitating its direct study and revealing many of its properties. Dr. Reich observed the orgone energy charge in the human biosystem was expressed in emotion and sexuality and could be measured bioelectrically. A person's overall vitality and aliveness was a function of human and atmospheric orgone charge and pulsation, and this could often be increased by sitting inside the orgone accumulator. Orgone charge of the tissues was a fundamental component of the immune system, as revealed in the bioelectric charging of red blood cells. The orgone accumulator was found to boost the immune system of people who sat inside them for periods of approximately 30 minutes a day over many days, and to thereby promote health and reduce the symptoms of some diseases. So incredible were the healing effects of the orgone accumulator that Dr. Theodor Wolff, a pioneer in psychosomatic medicine and associate of Dr. Reich, called the orgone accumulator the most important discovery in the history of medicine, bar none. Another German physician has stated, "Failure to use the orgone accumulator in the treatment of severe burns constitutes medical malpractice." Dr. Reich observed the orgone energy had a blue color, and he reasoned the Earth was surrounded by an envelope of blue glowing orgone energy. He observed the streaming of protoplasm in the cells and movements of smooth muscle tissue bore a resemblance and functional similarity to the movements of streaming cloud patterns and to the illuminating and animal-like aurora phenomenon. This was years before high-altitude aircraft discovered the atmospheric jet streams, and more than a decade before the astronauts returned color photos of the Earth's blue-glowing atmosphere. Dr. Reich reasoned that both the hurricanes and galaxies were created and put into motion by superimposing streams of orgone energy in a cosmic dance similar to the sexual attraction between male and female. He demonstrated the existence of orgone energy in deep vacuum tubes, which also glowed blue when charged up inside orgone energy accumulators. The orgone energy filled all space, he argued, satisfying many of the descriptions of the older cosmological ether of space, or what modern astronomy confusedly calls dark matter, and which is identified as an anomalous blue-glowing halo surrounding galaxies. Even more controversial, Dr. Reich developed a method to run small motors with the orgone energy. He also developed orgone energy devices for affecting the atmospheric orgone and clouds to bring rains during droughts or even into large deserts. Dr. Reich demonstrated the same life energy or orgone energy in a number of carefully controlled experiments, too much to report in this short video, which allow us to make these short summary statements with reasonable scientific certainty. His publications on these subjects presented very positive results from his experimental work, but this only added to the hysterical outrage of his critics. They slandered his early research on human sexuality, called the Orgone accumulator a sex box and subjected Dr. Reich and his associates to character assassination and slander. Dr. Reich's work and ideas were chronically misrepresented in popular newspaper and magazine smear articles. Fraudulent information and outright lies, and without investigating his work in any serious manner, the medical establishment encouraged the U.S. Food and Drug Administration to seek and obtain a court injunction to stop Dr. Reich's research, writing, and speaking about his discovery. In a legal case which has far greater significance to American freedoms and the U.S. Constitution than the better-known Scopes monkey trial, Dr. Reich was finally charged with contempt of court for the technical violation of an obscure cosmetic labeling law. He and an associate, Dr. Michael Silvert, were sent to prison, and Dr. Reich's books and research journals were ordered banned from interstate commerce, and existing copies were burned in New York City incinerators. Dr. Reich died in prison in 1957, while Dr. Silvert committed suicide shortly after his release. Victims of a left-wing smear campaign merged with organized big medicine and pharmaceutical interests. Fortunately, most of Dr. Reich's books survived and were republished. Newly republished editions of his writings are available from bookstores and internet catalogs in many different languages from all around the world. Since the 1960s, an entire new generation of scientists and physicians have investigated Dr. Reich's work, reproducing his experiments, applying them clinically, and finding them to be sound and the discovery of the orgone energy to be authentic. In particular, Dr. James DiMeo, a former university professor who was blacklisted and punished for his positive interests in Reich, has several books on this subject which are available. The Orgone Accumulator Handbook by Dr. DiMeo provides concise instructions on how to build and safely use the orgone energy accumulator, following Dr. Reich's original guidelines and methods. This small but information-packed book contains many photos, diagrams, a scientific bibliography, and resource guide. Another book edited by Dr. DiMeo, entitled Heretic's Notebook, presents the results of new experiments by many different scientists of the younger generation, proving and expanding upon the scientific substance of Dr. Reich's discovery. It also addresses questions of historical significance on related concepts, such as the cosmic ether of space, which always had positive evidence to support it, in spite of many distortions in the textbooks. These books, and others like them, are important for anyone interested in Dr. Reich's discoveries, which constitute a breakthrough and authentic revolution in the sciences. They are a part of the censored science of the 20th century, which are expunged from textbooks and about which the mainstream news media refuses to accurately report. You are encouraged to get these books and educate yourself.
I've done better than that. You'd think you'd know his name. Every time you switch on a light or turn on your radio, His contributions are as far-reaching as those of Albert Einstein, Isaac Newton, or even his nemesis, Tom Edison. This mysterious, tall, dark Serbian invented alternating current, wireless communication, the modern electric motor, basic laser and radar technology, X-rays, neon, robotics, remote control and cellular technology, and even Star Wars tactical warfare, all over 100 years ago. Yet today, who's ever heard of Nikola Tesla? How could history overlook such an incredible legacy? During his last moments on Earth, he no doubt asked himself the same question. Lying in a forgotten hotel room, alone and penniless, now 86 years of age. This is where our story begins. On that final night in January 1943, Nikola reflected on his life in near delirium.
The flashes of light. I never had control over the flashes. They are so tormenting.
Unstoppable images would flood his mind, accompanied by powerful flashes, like countless times before, due to a strange lifelong condition of his.
When the word was spoken to me, the image of the object would appear vividly. And sometimes I was unable to distinguish whether what I saw was tangible or not. This caused me great discomfort and anxiety.
In the murky light of the hotel room, he'd speak with ghosts from his past. Phantoms waiting for him to succumb. He remembered triumphant moments when he was struck with the vision of his world-transforming electric motor, the same design that's used everywhere today.
Like a flash of lightning, in an instant the truth was revealed.
He was so sure of his breakthrough that he felt compelled to share it. He sailed for New York City, the seat of the modern world. Soon he'd become the quintessential American success story, transforming himself from a penniless immigrant into a legend of his time. The glitterati of New York's finest would flock to his laboratory to witness the spectacular high-voltage demonstrations. Notables such as Mark Twain, John Muir, Sarah Bernhardt, Stanford White, and Teddy Roosevelt, and many others attended. But one person not present was his ruthless competitor, Thomas Edison. Nikola would recall the war of the currents, AC versus DC power. At the time, the electrification of the world was at stake.
Alternating current's too damn dangerous. He's using tens of thousands of volts. DC only uses hundreds. Sure, you can see the danger. Nikola Tesla. A man who could never take a joke.
There was only one kind of power system that could feed cities all over the country that would allow Edison's incandescent bulbs to burn brightly, and Nikola had it. Tom Edison fought against it, tooth and nail.
Hell, there are no rules here. We're trying to accomplish something.
The bitter Edison would even resort to electrocuting stray animals, including a rogue elephant, to incite public fear of Tesla's AC system. But Tesla would ultimately triumph over Edison by electrifying the Chicago World's Fair in 1893. It was a smashing success. Then, he and partner George Westinghouse created the world's first hydroelectric system at Niagara Falls. It was an incredible gamble at the time, and no one was sure it would work, except Tesla, the man of the hour. Nikola was now at the peak of his glory. He took to wearing formal clothes and wearing white gloves when starting experiments. He was a mystic who wrote and recited poetry and could speak 6 languages, yet he couldn't help his idiosyncrasies. People had no idea that he battled hallucinogenic episodes daily.
I have seen all the air around me filled with tongues of living flame. Their intensity, instead of diminishing, increased with time.
He was also described as a maniac for cleanliness and would avoid handshakes and fought an array of deep-seated phobias and compulsions.
All repeated acts or operations I performed had to be divisible by 3, and if I missed, I felt impelled to do it all over again, even if it took hours.
He learned to control his runaway mind with supreme discipline. Tesla's unquenchable fire drove him onward. Nikola would soon engage the biggest fish in the pond while undertaking his greatest venture, Wardenclyffe. This fantastic structure was the very culmination of Tesla's vision to create a worldwide communication system for sending sound and pictures. The primary goal was to beat Marconi for the honor of delivering the world's first transatlantic wireless signal. By no accident, Tesla's grand project was to be financed by the devil himself, J.P. Morgan.
You're a strange man indeed, Tesla. After the papers are signed, you may draw upon the House of Morgan, but it's important that I remain a silent partner. You do understand what that means, don't you, Mr. Tesla?
But Nikola had a secret. The system could also electrify the world. Wardenclyffe would provide limitless, free energy, everywhere, for everybody. When J.P. Morgan found out about this leap of technology, he wouldn't tolerate it. He knew Tesla could deliver, and the banker overlord couldn't put a meter on it.
A man always has 2 reasons for doing anything. A good reason, and the real reason.
Mid-construction, Morgan would cancel the contract and blackball Tesla, thus excluding him from any other investor.
Mr. Morgan, are you going to leave me in a hole? I've made 1,000 powerful enemies on your account. In 100 years from now, this country would give me much for the first honor of transmitting power without wires.
Wardenclyffe faltered, and Marconi sent his transatlantic signal. Tesla would suffer his second nervous breakdown, and never again would he regain his momentum as before. But despite his cruel fate, Nikola stayed the course. Decade after decade would pass, and he would bring forth new fantastic inventions in transportation, air flight, and even warfare. His death beam, as he intended, would bring an end to all warfare. An inventor to the end, all he ever wanted was to uplift the condition of humanity. But now in his hotel room, time was drawing short. He'd finger newspaper clippings and recall some of the smaller moments of his life. His table for one, walking the streets of New York, haunting Grand Central Station, or feeding his many pigeons. No one could begin to imagine what great secrets this mad scientist kept locked inside his head. No one, except J. Edgar Hoover and his G-men. They waited patiently for the great man to pass, and were ready to take everything that Nikola left behind. This story is about a man whose powerful ideas live on, as much of his work is still classified and used in the most esoteric projects imaginable today. Nikola Tesla single-handedly changed the world for the benefit of mankind, yet has been rewarded with obscurity. It's time to bring his story out of the shadows and into the light. With his last breath, Nikola gently smiled.
Let the future tell the truth, and evaluate each one according to his work and accomplishments. The present is theirs. The future, for which I have really worked, is mine.
Would they only have listened?
Greetings, citizens of Earth. My people have developed technologies which allow us to throw off our physical forms and travel great distances in the blink of an eye. We are in dialogue with your leaders to help the human race survive its infancy, for we believe in you. We are helping your scientists find cures for diseases which afflict your bodies, and helping you to preserve your planet's most precious resources. Many among us wage peace, and one day, with our help, war may be a thing of the past. Our army is 1 billion strong and growing. We are the people of the internet, and together, we are shaping the future of humankind.
Superpower, the BBC's internet season, this March.
See